Hi everyone, this video is about the Ladies' Diary. So the Ladies' Diary was a British almanac intended for women, but it was popular among all people. It was a long-running almanac. It was published annually from 1704 to 1840, which is really a remarkably long run for an almanac. The company that published the almanac, that is this company of stationers, along with the editors of the almanac, they wanted to make money. So if the almanac were not popular, it would just stop being published after a year or two. And that's what happened to many almanacs in this day and age. There were a lot of them that tried and failed. This one, though, proved to be very popular, running for, nearly 140 years. So one reason that we are interested in this almanac is that it featured mathematical items, which were both popular and non-trivial. And this provided a rare outlet for mathematically inclined everyday women, not just a few, not just nobility, but everyday women. So at this period in history, the literacy rate in Britain was about 50%, and so there would have been a fair number of people who would be able to enjoy such pursuits. So at left, we see a cover piece for the almanac for 1740, and it's sort of fun just to look at it. In the middle, featured prominently, is a portrait of a woman, and that woman is the Queen of England, Queen Caroline, who is the queen of the reigning monarch George II at that time. In fact, in every edition of the Ladies' Diary, the cover piece featured a portrait of the current queen. One of the first questions one might have about this Ladies' Diary is, well, what's in it? What does it look like? So a typical edition of the diary would have been about 3.5 inches by 6 inches and would contain about 40 pages of content. So it's essentially a book that you could fit in your pocket, intended for quick reference or for entertainment. So among these 40 pages, there were several sections. First, there would be a preface with tributes to women, and then a calendar with separate pages for each month and meteorological information. So if you look at left, you'll see one of those pages for the 1831 diary. Here we have the month of April. It tells us what's happening on each day of the week, when the sun rises and sets, the declination of the sun on that particular date, and things of that nature. So carrying on with the sections, we would then have a section on recipes and medical advice. There were discussions of love and marriage, some entertaining stories. And then these last two items are items of interest to us because they involve activities that could be classified as mathematical activities. So certainly the mathematical problems, which began in the 1707 Ladies' Diary, would be classified as mathematical activities, but also these things called enigmas. So these are word puzzles where you're asked to, given a description of something and asked to guess what the object is. So that's sort of a puzzle that might tangentially be classified as a mathematical activity. So what's interesting about this Ladies' Diary is that these mathematical activities proved to be really popular among the readership. There was a lot of correspondence back and forth about them, and it was part of what made this almanac successful. So here we have an example of an enigma from the 1744 Ladies' Diary, composed by a Miss Chambers. So maybe you'll want to pause the video at this point and just read through it and see if you can guess what the object is that Miss Chambers is describing. So on the previous slide, we mentioned that the mathematical problems first entered into the diary in 1707. And in fact, here we see those very first questions from the 1707 diary. Here's question 1 and question 2. So the first question is about how long it would take to count a certain amount of money. And question 2 is one of these sort of common algebraic questions in which you're asked to discover someone's age. So you might want to read through exactly what the questions are and the solutions. Now, in the 1707 almanac, the solution would not have been presented. Okay, that would have had to have waited for the following year. That would have had to have waited for 1708, 1709 for people to see what the solutions were. So if you look at the mathematical problems from the 1707 diary, you might come to the conclusion that the mathematical problems were not really overly difficult, that all you needed was just a few minutes of time and maybe a little bit of knowledge of basic algebra in order to solve these problems. So as the problems grew in popularity, though, their difficulty also increased. There are a lot of problems in the diary that I find to be quite difficult. And here I just picked an example of one. So this is from 1745. So this problem, if you read through it, you'll see that what it's requiring us to do is to find the shortest distance of something. That is, we're asked to minimize a quantity. And we learn the art of minimization first in calculus. Now, Isaac Newton, who was one of the leading players in the story of calculus, he would have been dead only about 20 years when this problem appeared, but yet his work is made plain in this solution. So the solver of the problem uses a fluxion, which is the sort of the Newtonian word for a derivative to solve this problem. Now, one thing you might notice also about this problem and its solution is that they were both, the problem was proposed and the published solution was they were both given by men. And so as the diary increased in popularity, it was not only popular among women, but also among men. So if you're intrigued by the Ladies' Diary and you want to learn a little bit more about it, here are a couple of references that you could pursue. So first I want to talk about item 2. So this book is titled The Impact and Legacy of the Ladies' Diary, published by MAA Press in 2021. So it gives a more detailed description about what was in the diary, what the historical context was, et cetera, who the editors were, more about the readership, things of that nature. It's a very interesting book. Now, if you want to sort of delve back to even further, or delve back to sort of first sources, you could go to this work by Laybourne, who actually compiled problems and solutions, mathematical problems and solutions from the diary, from its commencement here, 1704, up through 1816. In fact, some of the pages that I've shown you in these previous slides of mathematical problems likely came from this Laybourne volume. All right, so now the important part. Now, on an earlier slide, I showed you an enigma, and maybe you stopped to read what it was. So on the next slide, I'm going to give you the answer to the enigma. And the object is a frying pan.